So, has Momoshiki all this time known about all of Kashin Koji's plans? And does that mean Momoshiki also has the probability to make the future branch even further? Yep, that's at least a big question mark representing the entire topic this time. And as we know, the fact is that there is a concept here that could actually determine the final outcome of this story. But again, even so, this does not guarantee 100% that it will happen. Moreover, this is purely from the perspective of the fans, especially myself. Still, to be honest, this would be very interesting. In short, a secret that may not really be a secret was finally revealed. Momoshiki admitted that it was quite annoying, but in fact their minds were linked. In other words, they could see everything straight away, which meant that there were no lies or anything that could be kept hidden. So at this point, Ikemoto seems to have secretly left hints or clues in the last few chapters, especially if this is all about the singularity of fate. Because once again, the point of the dialogue between Momoshiki and Boruto refers to one thing that we must understand, which is that it's all about minds being linked. Logically, whatever strategy or plan has been set up in such a way, it will all go through the mind. Yep, you know what I mean, right? And regardless of the actual outcome that Boruto has offered, which is his own body, if Momoshiki defeats Jura, let's put that issue aside for a moment. So what is it that I really want to say? What I want to say is that we may have misunderstood what the singularity of fate is all along. Most of us view the singularity of fate as a fixed point in the future, something that has been predetermined, something that will happen whether we like it or not. However, if we draw a common thread from the dialogue between Momoshiki and Boruto in chapter 29, it becomes clear that fate's singularity is not about a fixed future, but about linked consciousness. Because when two entities share thoughts, what is shared is not only information, but also intentions, doubts, fears, and possibilities. And it is at this point that the future begins to branch out, not because time itself changes, but because the minds observing the future influence it. Momoshiki openly admits that even though it's annoying, their minds are indeed linked. There are no lies. Nothing can be hidden. And this admission is very dangerous, because with that fact, Momoshiki can know every plan, every strategy, even every decision before it's ever spoken, right? Logically, all plans originate from the mind. Before a strategy is executed, it always goes through an initial stage being thought of, and once again, as I just said. And if that mind is no longer entirely private, then nothing can truly be called a surprise or anything like that. Yeah, you know what I mean? This is why the singularity of fate can no longer be understood as a straight line. This is a condition where the future becomes increasingly unstable as more and more consciousnesses collide within it. Through Momoshiki's silence, through Boruto's increasingly mature expressions, and through the way Kashin Koji presents the future, not as a certainty, but as a probability, because the more people who know the future, the greater the chance that future will fail to happen. This is a very classic paradox, and Kashin Koji once explained it. Quite literally, the number of people who know the future becomes the very reason why that future changes and branches. And at the interesting point, do you still remember the part where Kawaki and Boruto talked at the Hokage statue after the interrogation arc? In short, at this point, Boruto states that since 2 years ago, more precisely, since the time Boruto and Sasuke fought against Code, Boruto decided to stop using karma. Because when he used karma, he felt something similar to when Momoshiki possessed him. And of course, by deciding to no longer use karma, Momoshiki has been completely quiet ever since. Now, in this case, there are so many speculations and interpretations about what completely quiet means. I mean, does the fact that Momoshiki is completely quiet mean that he has truly given up and is letting Boruto die at the hands of the Divine Tree humans, especially Jura? Because I am very sure that almost 99% of fans have guessed or at least had high expectations when Boruto defeated Hidari in chapter 13, and Boruto ended up with a Biju bomb shot in his body. At this point, the majority of fans guessed that it would cause Momoshiki to possess his body. Because once again, there is a pattern when Momoshiki possesses Boruto's body, and it's not just about running out of chakra. Rather, there are several factors, one of which is when Boruto is injured. However, it seems that there is a factor far beyond that. What I mean is, when Momoshiki extracted all the karma data to save Boruto, at this point, Momoshiki also seemed to be able to easily possess Boruto's body. However, that's not entirely the case, because with evidence such as when Kawaki destroyed Boruto's right eye, and Momoshiki also let Kawaki escape from the Konoha Shinobi, at least that is enough to prove that Momoshiki's control over Boruto is not limited to running out of chakra. Yeah, you know what I mean, right? But with that fact, it seems that chapter 13 has proven that Momoshiki truly wants Boruto dead. And on the other hand, if we try to look at it from multiple perspectives, the conversation between Boruto and Momoshiki in this chapter actually manages to trigger two things, or more precisely, two mysteries that really spark our curiosity. First, it's about Momoshiki's power. Because honestly, the dialogue between Momoshiki and Boruto is about power, right? And if we're talking about Momoshiki, one of his powers that is still very overpowered is karma. Because, in my personal opinion, regardless of how powerful Boruto is and how far his techniques have advanced, he still needs to have some kind of defensive technique. And we know that karma's defense is something that truly cannot be underestimated. Besides being able to absorb chakra or something similar as a form of defense, karma can also trigger attacks with such terrifying output, right? And the question is Boruto currently on par with Kawaki's power when using karma? I mean, after we saw how massive the damage was that karma unleashed to destroy Jura, he was still able to withstand it, and at that point, he even summoned the roots of the Shinju, which were certainly capable of regenerating all his wounds, including his destroyed Rinnegan. The question is, with Momoshiki and Boruto's current power, are they capable of defeating Jura? But for some reason, I think this is still not enough. Believe it or not, aside from it being too early, Boruto needs to awaken his pure power, and that is Jougan. But for the second question, is the Jougan actually non-canon, especially since the leaks for Chapter 29 came out? And I'm sure some of these doubts or questions have emerged among a large portion of the fans. Not entirely, of course, but that's just how it is. Because if we look at this panel, it seems like most people were really hoping that when Boruto opened his right eye, it would be Jougan. But in reality, it was Byakugan. And another question that's still quite relevant and worth being curious about is whether the cooperation between Boruto and Momoshiki is still not enough to awaken the Jougan. But honestly, sorry, in my opinion, this question is ridiculous. Basically, the Jougan is a super rare and extremely special eye, unlike the Byakugan, which is the base eye of Momoshiki Otsutsuki. So if Boruto just started using Momoshiki's karma power again and suddenly his right eye opened as the Byakugan, that would be normal. It's also important to remember that Momoshiki is not the true owner of the Jougan. Rather, it is a power that awakened in Boruto's body thanks to the otsutsuki DNA inheritance within him. So, what exactly can trigger the Jougan? In my opinion, one of the triggers for the awakening of the Jougan is likely to occur when Boruto loses the most precious thing in his life, namely Himawari, either through her death or when Boruto fails to protect her. This is in line with Momoshiki's statement that the blue eyes will take everything from you. If the context of the blue eyes is the Jougan, then one thing has not yet fully happened because Boruto still has Himawari. If Himawari truly dies right in front of Boruto, only then would Momoshiki's prophecy feel fully realized, and that's where the Jougan would most likely awaken as the price to pay for everything. But would that still not be enough to awaken the Jougan? And is losing everything, including Himawari, really a price worth paying to awaken the Jougan? Well, whatever your thoughts are, let's talk in the comments. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe. I'm Nim without the E. See you in the next video. Bye-bye, Dadabayo.